Welcome to Shahnameh, Book of Kings. Today we continue with the Reign of Khosrow Parvis. When the king learned that his wolf, Bahram, had emerged from the thicket once more and was at the head of an army whose dust obscured the sky's brightness, he said to his councilor, Khorad-Borzin, "Hurry to the emperor and speak to him with all persuasiveness you can muster in Persia and beyond. You are the most knowledgeable of men, and you have the most eloquence." He opened the door to his treasury and brought out such jewels, swords, and gold belts that Khorad-Borzin murmured the name of God in wonder. He took these objects as gifts and made his way to the Oxus. From there he continued by a secret route. When at last he reached the palace, he selected messengers to announce his arrival to the emperor. As soon as he heard the news, the emperor had the audience hall prepared and gave orders that the envoy be admitted. Khorad-Borzin entered humbly, made his obeisance before the emperor, and said briefly, "Your slave will speak when you order him to." The emperor replied, "Eloquent talk will make an old man's heart young again. Tell us the profitable things you have to say. What's said is the marrow of a meeting. Things left unsaid are only the skin." These words reminded Khorad-Borzin of the ancient enmity between their countries. He began his speech by invoking the world's creator, who has made the heavens sphere and the earth in time, and both the weak and powerful. Then he spoke of the certainty of death and the history of the Persian kings. He continued, "Now, the king of Persia is your relative, and his happiness and sorrow depend on your good and bad fortune. In the times of great kings, his mother's father was the emperor of China. Now in these days, when many things have changed, our alliance is renewed. May God, who bestows victory, help you keep, and may the nobles of the earth be as your slaves." The emperor listened to him and said, "You are a wise man. If there is another like you in Persia, he must be eloquent enough to praise the heavens." A palace was set aside at the court for the envoy, and the emperor kept him close by. At his command, the gifts were counted out to the court treasurer, and the emperor said to him, "May you never want for wealth in the world. If there is something I can give you in exchange for all you have brought, tell me what it is. But you are more splendid than all the gifts. You are the crown of the world's wise men." Khorad's lodgings were beautiful, decorated with all kinds of fabrics, and he was always welcome to join the emperor at table, out hunting during the court festivities, or to drink wine with them. He waited for a chance to make his case. One day he saw an opportunity and bravely spoke up. "Bahram has an evil nature," he said. "He's more malevolent than Ahriman himself. He sells men of experience and understanding for profit, and for paltry profit at that. It was Hormozd who promoted him, who lifted him up from the sun's sphere. Before that, no one had even heard of him. But then he was successful in everything he touched. He might act very well toward you now, but in the end he will betray you, as he betrayed the Persian king. He has no respect for either king or God. If you send him to the Persian king, you'll lift the king's head above the moon with happiness. All Persia and China will then be yours, and you can have your palace anywhere you wish." The emperor was astonished at these words. His eyes darkened, and he said, "If you would keep my goodwill, don't seize such things. I'm not a suspicious man, and I don't break my word. A man who breaks his word has the dust as his shroud." When Khorad heard this, he knew that his mission had failed, and that Bahram had encouraged the emperor with hopes of conquering Persia. To talk further with him would be a waste of breath. Having lost hope of winning over the emperor, he decided to approach the empress. He looked for someone with access to her. He met with the palace chamberlain and beguiled him with stories about Khosrow Parvis. Then he said to him, "I need to meet with the empress. Help me to be introduced to her as a scribe." The man replied, "There's no hope. That Bahram Chubanes, her son-in-law, and all the power he has here is derived from her. You're a learned man. Seek some other way, and tell no one your secrets." Khorad-Borzin could see no solution to his difficulties. There was an old Turk named Qalun, who was held in contempt by other Turks. He wore sheepskins and lived off whey and millet. Khorad-Borzin to summon this man to his fine quarters, where he gave him gold and silver, coins, good meals, and entertained him with men of standing and importance. Khorad was cautious and patient, sly and careful, and while he was cultivating Qalun, he also continued questioning the chamberlain of the empress's palace. This man, who visited the empress day and night, was tight-lipped and revealed nothing. But one day he said to Khorad, "You're a scholar and a learned man, and if you had some knowledge of medicine too and were famous for it, you would be as welcome as a new crown on the empress's head, because her daughter is ill." Khorad replied, "I have some medical knowledge. If you can tell the empress, I will do my best in this business." The chamberlain hurried to the empress and said that a new doctor had arrived. She replied, "May you live in happiness for this news. Bring him here, and don't stand searching or scratching your head. Get on with it." He ran to Khorad-Borzin and said, "See that you do this secretly. Go to her and don't tell her your name. Just be an amiable doctor." Khorad went to the empress and saw that her daughter was suffering from a liver complaint. He asked for pomegranate juice and a particular kind of cress that grows on the banks of streams, and with this he tried to bring down the fever in her brain. By God's will, after 7 days, the girl was well again, and as resplendent as the new moon. The empress brought a purse of gold coins from her treasury and 5 lengths of gold cloth. She said, "Take these worthless gifts, and ask for anything else you desire." Khorad replied, "Keep these things for now. I shall ask for your help when I need it." For his part, Bahram had reached Marv, where he had drawn up an army as splendid as pheasant feathers. A messenger from the emperor reached him saying, "Let no one go into Persia, because if Khosrow Parvis learns of our plans, he'll change his disposition towards us. Have it announced that if anyone crosses into Iran without a sealed order from me, I'll have him hacked in two, and I swear by God that I won't let him ransom his life with silver." For 3 months, Khorad watched these secret preparations. Then, sick at heart, he summoned Qalun and made much of him. He said, "Every man in the world has some kind of secret in his heart. You used to beg door to door in China for coarse barley bread and millet and sheepskins to wear. Now your food is fine bread and lamb, and you dress in white silk. Look how you were and how you are. How men's curses have turned to congratulations. Now your life is drawing to an end. You've seen many days and nights, mountains and plains. There is something I want you to do. It's dangerous, and you may gain the throne from it, or you may end up in the black dirt. I've obtained a copy of the emperor's seal, and I want you to travel quickly to Bahram and stay in Marv. There you're to put on your black sheepskin and take a knife with you. Wait for the day of the month that is called Bahram, because he believes that's an inauspicious day for him. I've watched him for years, and on that day, he never wants a crowd of people near him. He hides himself away wrapped in Chinese brocade, saying that you're bringing the great lord Bahram Chubane a message from the emperor's daughter. See that you keep the knife in your sleeve until he calls for you. When you're admitted, say, 'Her Majesty ordered me to whisper her message in your ear, so that no one else may hear it.' And when he asks, 'What message?' run to him and plunge the knife into his cup, and then look for a way to escape. Whoever hears him cry out will flee from him in the stables, or to look to the carpets or treasury. No one's going to harm you for this murder. And if you are killed for this, you've already experienced the good and the bad that this world has to offer. But it's likely that no one will pay any attention to you. And if you can get away with this, and you have brought the world and paid its price, King Khosrow Parvis will give you a city, a portion of the world for your own." Qalun said, "I'll need a pass to get to him. I reached the age of 100. How much longer am I going to live and want? My body and soul are ready to sacrifice themselves for you, since you've looked after me in the days of my wretchedness." When Khorad heard this, he hurried to the empress and said to her, "The time has come, your majesty, for me to ask for your help. 2 of my men have been thrown into chains, and I need your assistance to get them free. Get me a copy of the emperor's seal. You'll be giving me my life back if you do this." The empress says, "He's in a drunken sleep. I'll take an impression of his seal from his finger." She asked Khorad for clay, and then she went to her husband's bedside and impressed his seal ring on the clay. This she gave to Khorad, who thanked her and handed it over to the old man, Qalun. Qalun took the impression of the seal and made his way quickly to Marv. There he waited till the day of Bahram, the one Bahram thought of as inauspicious. Bahram was alone in his house with a slave, eating a meal of pomegranates, apples, and quinces. Qalun went there and said to the doorman, "I'm not a warrior or a free man. I've been sent by the emperor's daughter. Her ladyship told me a secret to whisper in the king's ear by his grace. She's pregnant and unwell. If you would announce me, I'll give the message to his majesty." The doorman hurried to Bahram and said, "An ugly messenger dressed in a sheepskin is here. He says he has a message for your majesty from the emperor's daughter." Bahram said, "Tell him to show his face in here." Qalun approached and put his head inside the door. Bahram saw a weak old man standing there and said, "If you have a letter, bring it here." Qalun replied, "It's something she said, that's all. I don't want to say it in front of anyone else." Bahram said, "Be quick then, come and tell me in my ear. Don't stand on ceremony." Qalun went forward with the knife in his sleeve, and then his treachery became apparent. He bent as if to whisper in Bahram's ear, and plunged the knife into him, and the house was in an immediate uproar. As Bahram cried out, "Ha! I am dead!" people came running to him. He said, "Grab that man! Ask him who sent him." Everyone who was in the house descended on the old man. They broke his legs, and the servants slapped and punched him, but no matter how hard they hit him, he never opened his lips, though they tormented him from midday to midnight. By then his arms were also broken. They flung him into the courtyard, and with grief in their hearts they returned to Bahram. Blood flowed from his wounds. His cheeks were flushed, and sighs escaped his lips. At that moment, his sister Gordia came to him, tearing out her hair in anguish. Distracted with grief, she laid her wounded brother's head against her breast and cried out, "You were a knight whose presence spread such fear that lions would slink away when you came near, who felled this pillar of the world, who planned this crime and put the dagger in his hand. Alas, for your ambition and your might, your prowess that put savage lions to flight. You bowed to neither god nor king. Whose blow so cruelly laid your mammoth body low? Who wrenched the roots up this mountainside? Who felled this cypress in its noble pride? Who stretched his hand out to this princely crown and flung it so contemptuously down? Who filled the sea with earth? Who shattered this great rocky peak and made it an abyss? We're strangers here, with no one to protect our lives and wealth or treat us with respect. My lord, I said to you repeatedly, do not uproot the tree of loyalty. But if one Sassian girl remains and crowns herself, it will be she who reigns, and all the provinces in Persia's land will willingly submit to her command. Their hearts will not betray this family. But you ignored my words. My lord and me regret your actions and the paths you trod, and take your guilty soul from here to God. Evil has come to our house. I weep that all our foes are wolves, and we are sheep. When the wounded man heard her words and understood the wisdom of her heart, and saw her face scored by her nails, her hair torn from her head, her heart filled with anguish, and her eyes with tears, he spoke sadly and falteringly. Your advice lacked for nothing, but now my life draws to an end. Your advice had no effect on me. A devil, a demon misled me. There never was a king greater than Jamshid. The world lived in awe and hope of him, and yet he was misled by demons and made the earth a dark and fearsome place for himself. There was King Kavis, who ruled the world and was blessed by fortune, and he too was destroyed by a wretched demon. He ascended into the sky to see the turning spheres, the moon and the sun, and you know the evil that came to him because of this. A demon misled me too, and I strayed from righteousness. I regret the evil I have done, but I trust that God will pardon me. Thus, was it written on my forehead. Why should I grieve for old sorrows again? The water rise above my head, and all my joys and sorrows are so much wind. This was it written, and what had to come came to pass, neither more nor less. I remember the words of advice you gave me. They are like jeweled earrings in my ears. But now that justice and injustice come to an end for me, do not repeat these words any more. Turn your face toward God. Trust that fortune will smile again for you. The only friend you have against evil is God. Speak with no one of either sorrow or joy. This is the portion I have had in the world, this and no more. Now it has come to an end, and I must depart. Then he said to Yalin, I hand the army over to you. Pray for good fortune. Look after my virtuous sister. There is no finer adviser in the world than she is. Don't be separated from one another. Stay always together. Don't remain in this enemy land. I have traveled here and am sickened by it. Go immediately to Khosrow Parvis. Tell him your story and hear what he says. If he forgives you, have him only him as the sun and moon of your lives. Build me a tomb in Persia and destroy the palace I made for myself at Reign. I undertook so much for the Emperor of China, and I had no thanks for it. This was not a just reward for my pains, that he should send some devil to kill me. Thus has it always been for the Persians. There has always been some evil demon guiding us. Bahram had a scribe come and write a letter on silk. He said, Tell the emperor, Bahram has gone, and he has gone wretchedly and in sorrow, and with his ambitions thwarted. Write, Look after those I leave behind, and save them from their enemies, since I never did you any harm, and sought only righteousness and wisdom on your behalf. Then he spoke at length to his sister, first pressing her beloved head against his chest, then putting his mouth to her ear. In this fashion, his eyes filled with blood, he gave up his soul. Everyone there wept bitterly for him, and their hearts were filled with anguish. His sister was loud in her laments, going over in her mind all he had said to her, and her heart was split in two with grief. They constructed a narrow coffin of silver and put a muslin undershirt on him, then wrapped his warlike body in brocade. Lastly, they sprinkled camphor over the body until the head was hidden beneath it. Khorad escaped back to Iran, where he was warmly welcomed by Khosrow Parvis. The Emperor of China wished to honor Bahram Chubana's memory by proposing marriage to his sister Gordia, and he sent a letter to her on that effect. This young, wise woman sat and deliberated with her adviser. She said, A new proposal has come to me, and it will always be remembered in my heart. The Emperor of China has asked for my hand in the most ornate language. He has no faults. He is a great king, a brave man, and the Lord of Turin. But whenever the Turks and Persians have tried to ally themselves in this way, the result has been sorrow and trouble. Look at Siavash and Afrazab. What did Siavash gain except exposure to the burning sun? No mother ever bore such a fine young man, and yet he was destroyed. And what did Siavash's son do but raise the dust of battle over Iran and Tehran? We must arrange matters so that we flee in secret from these Turks to Persia. I have been worried about this for some time, and I've written a letter to Jerdu asking him to intercede for us with Khosrow Parvis and to tell him all that we've suffered. Everyone there said, You are our mistress. An iron mountain cannot make you quail. We will follow wherever you lead. You are more clever than a wise man, more intelligent than a knowledgeable vizier. We are all your servants, and yours to command, and we will support you in your response to the emperor's request. She reviewed her troops and had money made ready. She watched the army as it passed before her and chose 1,160 men, champions who would not desert even if they faced 10 enemies. She bid them and then returned to her house, where she said to the army commanders, Once a man has decided on a journey, his heart should be steadfast through good and bad fortune. He does not fear the might of the enemy, even if severed heads rain down on him from the clouds. We are strangers in Tehran. We have no friends or allies here. We are weak and helpless among these Chinese noblemen. We must travel in darkness when our enemies are bewildered by sleep. Don't be anxious about the journey. even if a Chinese army attacks us, for surely their chieftains will come after us with their heavy maces. And if they come, stand together and give blows as good as those you receive. If any of you are not with me in this, you can stay here." With one voice they replied, "We are your servants, and we will not turn aside from your commands." Then they prepared for battle against the Chinese forces. Yelensina, May, and Izud-Goshap mounted their horses and said, "It is better to die with honor than to live with the Chinese triumphing over us." Meanwhile, Gordia visited the camel caravans and asked to see camels paraded before her. She chose 3,000 of them and loaded them with their baggage. When night fell, Gordia mounted her horse. She sat like a proud warrior, grasping a mace in her hand. Her horse was covered with splendid barding, and she wore armor and a helmet and a sword at her side. Her army rode forward like the wind through the dark night and the bright day. And here is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more tales. Many more tales. Until then, my friends,